This week, new developments in the fight against PFAS pollution in our water. As Governor Tony Evers says he won't sign a Republican-authored PFAS bill, Democrats propose their own set of bills. PFAS chemicals are man-made and do not break down easily in nature. They're found in a range of products like cookware and firefighting foam. PFAS has been linked to health problems like cancer and decreased vaccine efficacy in children. Municipalities across Wisconsin struggle with PFAS contamination in groundwater, including Madison, Wausau, and the town of Campbell on French Island. Last summer, Republicans set aside $125 million to address PFAS pollution, but it sits unused as lawmakers spar over how to use it. Republican lawmakers authored this bill that calls for spending the money on grants for municipalities, private landowners, and waste disposal facilities to test for PFAS in water treatment plants and wells. If a landowner's property becomes contaminated and it's not their fault, they also would be eligible for grants. The DNR would need landowners' permission to test their water for PFAS. Now, this bill's cleared the legislature, but Governor Evers says he'll veto it. The governor, other Democrats, and environmental groups are concerned that the bill limits the Department of Natural Resources authority to hold polluters liable. Evers again this week asked the Joint Finance Committee to release the $125 million it set aside. Well, on Thursday, Democrats introduced this new legislation. It includes PFAS standards for groundwater and drinking water, banning PFAS products, PFAS testing and cleanup resources, and a way to use the money set aside for new grant programs. Here with me now is Republican Senator Eric Wimberger, one of the co-authors of that PFAS bill we have been diving into this morning. Senator, thanks for joining the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. So the governor and other conservation groups had the same concerns about this bill back in the fall that they do today, that it limits the DNR's authority to hold polluters accountable. So I want to ask, what conversations did you have? Your eyes are closing here, but I have to ask, what conversations did you have with the governor's office about those concerns between then and now? Because that language is still in the bill.
It's always been a concern about how to limit the DNR's authority. The DNR's authority is limited, so how far do you do it? And that's kind of a mischaracterization when he says limits the DNR's authority to hold polluters accountable. What is being limited, and who are you calling a polluter? The current spills law calls a polluter anybody who owns a property that emits a hazardous substance. So anybody who owns a piece of land that a pollution plume is going through is emitting to their neighbor. So you can have you can have a person who's miles away from the point source who has it coming in from their neighbor, but then it goes through their land into the next neighbor. Each one of those people are going to be emitters, and to hold those people accountable under current law by calling them polluters is the thing that's wrong.
And what makes you think that the government is going to target those landowners, like farmers, instead of going after the major manufacturers and airports that are largely behind the pollution?
Yeah, they pinky swear that they rarely do that. And my retort is, well, if you rarely ever do that, why do you want the authority? The problem is not necessarily always when someone is going to be subject to these remediation orders that they end up having to put in hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars worth of test wells around to monitor, which is the possibility. But once you're declared an emitter subject to remediation orders, you have to report that to your bank, which is not going to renew your loan, to anybody who might buy your land or a potential purchaser. It means your land value is going to plummet. You're just going to destroy people financially simply by having the concept of you being declared an emitter. So what SB 312 does is it says the point source polluter is the one you can go after. But if you're just the one who happens to be in this pollution plume, we're not going to hold you responsible as an emitter as long as you let the DNR go on to your property as needed to kind of poke around and figure stuff out.
So you're sitting here with me this morning, obviously defending that portion of the bill. So what conversations did you have with the governor's office to explain your position as he and other environmental groups raised the concerns about it?
Well,
what did you talk about there?
The bill came out in October, I want to say, but that was because we were speaking with the administration, many meetings, and the DNR for for months over the entire summer and into the fall. And then we had a meeting specifically with Governor Evers himself where I told him exactly what I'm telling you, which is to say hold polluters accountable, you have to dive into the definitions of those things in current law to make sure you're getting after the right people. And apparently it wasn't convincing, or he's not on board yet with that concept.
Is there anything in the amended version of the bill that Governor Evers proposed that you can get behind?
Well, he proposed a 1310, and that's a fancy name for just releasing the funds. So it's not so much that we can't come to terms on what's the best way to spend the money. The purpose of a bill like SB 312 is to expand the types of ways that you can spend the money, because you're kind of shoehorning things into existing programs right now. So maybe there's something that can be expanded, particular for PFAS. And I think there's some good debate and good-natured debate about what's more appropriate than another thing or what to prioritize. But right now there's no real plan coming from Governor Evers. He just wants release of money with no plan, which frankly is going to allow the DNR not only to use it, I guess, to remediate PFAS, but at the same time to use that money on enforcement orders and enforcement of fines. And it's just a difficult pill for me to swallow.
On that same vein, the governor has urged the DNR to submit another request to Joint Finance to release the money. You're a member of that committee. Is that going to happen?
Well, they submitted it, and we'll take a look at it, but that's rather recent. I think the concept of his lamentations that we're not acting fast enough, I mean, this is a recent request.
He's asked, he directed the DNR another time too. It's not his first time
Right.
the DNR to
Yeah,
do
but
that.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't exactly that there was a request made back a year ago in June when the budget was passed. This is a rather recent incarnation after we'd already introduced SB 312 that he's now just asked for the money without any strings attached.
So we are at the end of session. It is clear PFAS contamination is an issue communities need help with now. You know this very well. You represent the Green Bay area, which is struggling with contamination. So with so much disagreement, how can you have conversations across the aisle to get this done for those municipalities struggling?
I think one way or another, there will be a meeting of the minds. I still have hope that Governor Evers will come to a better understanding of what the ramifications of the current spills law are on innocent landowners. And in one way or another, I think everybody has the right attitude to try to deal with this, and over the course of time, I think it'll iron out.
What's your specific plan? Are you going to reach out to the governor's office?
Oh, we do rather frequently. But the one-on-one meetings are difficult to get with someone who has to deal with 1,200 bills and senators and representatives asking for meetings all the time. So I'm not necessarily offended by that. We work with their staff all the time to try and come to a better understanding of how to go forward.
Well, a lot of municipalities, again, would like to see this move forward. We'll be watching this closely. Senator Wimberger, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course.